You check your bank balance before you check the weather. Rent, bills, debt, savings, money touches almost every decision you make today. Now picture a life with zero coins, zero bills, zero bank account, zero concept of price. And somehow, everyone still eats. Everyone still has shelter. Nobody starves while someone else hoards. For roughly 290,000 of the 300,000 years humans have existed, money didn't exist. Not as an idea. Not as a backup plan. So how did anyone get anything? Your brain, the one running your life right now, is only a few thousand years removed from a mind that never once had to think about money. Here's what actually replaced it. Anthropologists call it generalized reciprocity, giving without expecting anything back right away. No numbers, no ledger, just memory and reputation. Most hunter-gatherer economies ran on what researchers call an immediate return system. You ate what you found, mostly the same day. You shared it with whoever was standing next to you. Meat spoiled fast in most climates. Keeping more than your share just meant watching food rot while the people around you went hungry. Sharing wasn't generosity. It was practical. You'd think a system with no laws needs something written down somewhere. Actually, the law lived inside people. What you did for others and what they remembered you doing. That was the entire filing system, and it never forgot. Wait, if there's no ledger, what stops someone from just taking without ever giving back? Which raises an uncomfortable question. If you dropped into a life like that tomorrow, would your reputation survive a single week? Your survival depended entirely on your relationships. If people didn't like you, they didn't have to feed you when you were starving. That was the whole financial system. No collateral, no contract, just whether people wanted you around. Giving generously now with nothing back immediately worked like insurance. You built it up before you needed it, so when injury or bad luck found you later, there was somewhere to turn. You'd guess debt back then worked kind of like a casual favor, easy to forget. Actually, it was the opposite of casual. It was the most enforced law in existence, and nobody had to write it down. Here's the difference from today. You can owe a stranger money and never see them again, protected by a contract and a court. In a band with no money, you couldn't hide from an unpaid debt. Everyone in the group knew exactly who had given, who had taken, and who hadn't paid it back. In Shanidar Cave, in modern-day Iraq, researchers found the remains of a man archaeologists now call Shanidar I. Blind in one eye, missing part of an arm below the elbow, hearing badly damaged. Injuries like that should have ended him fast in a hunting society. He lived for years afterward. That means someone fed him, protected him, and kept him alive long after he'd stopped being able to give anything back. Nearly 2,000 miles away at Dmanisi in modern-day Georgia, archaeologists found a skull with almost no teeth left, lost years before death. A person who couldn't chew raw meat or tough plants on his own. That means someone softened his food, or fed him directly, for years. With no medicine, no promise it would ever be returned, and nothing to gain except keeping him alive. But here's the strange part. This wasn't barter either. Not 2 rabbits for a spear. Much of it was gift exchange, something given now with an unspoken, undated promise that something would come back eventually, sometimes to a completely different person in the group. Archaeologists have traced obsidian tools at sites across the East African Rift Valley back to a single outcrop hundreds of kilometers away. Separate, unrelated groups, moving material that far with no currency involved. Just trust, carried by hand, generation after generation. No trucks, no roads, no middleman taking a cut. Just people passing something forward, betting on a promise nobody signed. It worked because reputation followed you for your entire life, across an entire region. There was no scamming your way out and moving to a new town. There was no anonymity to disappear into. This is the part most documentaries skip. The equality in these societies wasn't kindness. It was enforced. Researchers studying these systems describe leveling mechanisms. social pressure that made hoarding almost impossible. Try to stockpile while others went without, and you didn't get admired. You got isolated. You'd assume this kind of equality came from people just being generous by nature. Actually, it was policed, and the punishment for breaking it was real. That's the exact opposite of how wealth works now. Today, accumulating more gets you praised. A bigger house, a nicer car, a padded account. Back then, accumulating too much while others had less wasn't a flex. It was treated as a threat to the entire group's survival. Scientists don't love admitting this part, but in the most extreme documented cases, someone who kept breaking the sharing rules could be shamed, cut off, or exiled. And exile, with nobody left to share with you, was close to a death sentence. Now something changes. Agriculture happens. The moment humans started storing surplus food, this whole structure collapsed. Wealth, hierarchy, and inequality followed almost immediately, because now, for the first time, there was something worth hoarding, and something worth defending. Surplus created storage. Storage created ownership. Ownership created the first real gap between people who had more and people who had less. Money itself came much later. Coins show up only a few thousand years ago, but the psychology was already built. Comparison, ownership, debt as power instead of trust. You think money created inequality. Actually, inequality showed up the moment storage did. Money just gave it a number. You can owe a bank money and never meet a single person affected by it. They couldn't owe anyone anything without the whole group knowing and their life depending on making it right. You measure your worth in a number that moves up and down on a screen. They measured it in whether people would still feed them if they got sick tomorrow. You think efficiency made life better. Actually, it just made it possible to survive without anyone needing to like you. We built an entire system to let strangers trust each other without ever needing a relationship. It's efficient. It's also the first time in human history that survival stopped depending on whether anyone actually liked you. Tomorrow morning, you'll check your balance before you check the weather again. Just remember, for almost the entire history of our species, the only balance that ever mattered was how people felt about you. So here's the real question. If the number in your account disappeared tomorrow, how many people would still show up for you?